How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, thank you for joining the Hollywood Times, and I'm excited to chat with you. So the basis of this interview is the actually another interview Adele just had with Oprah. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how that specific interview inspired you, and then give us a background of what you do in your work?
Yeah, it's a great lead in, and I watched the interview, the whole show. It was very moving. So I've been working with families for 40 years, and I've watched people lose their parents, and I've watched people lose their parents and have unresolved issues, and I've watched people lose their parents and have resolution. And the ones that have resolution have they grieve, but it is a smoother, less complicated, malleable experience. It's not as fraught with the what ifs, which are unanswerable.
Mhm.
And so I could see that she got the piece from reconciling with her dad, having that conversation, and her grief is, I don't like to call normal grief because everybody grieves in a different way. But I've seen it clog up the emotional system when you haven't really reconciled how they were as parents, regardless of, you know, you've got the worst case scenario of trauma and abuse and, abandonment
Mhm.
to just hurt feelings over maybe prioritizing or favoritizing one sibling over another, or, so it's got this kind of reconciliation has a broad range of background to pull from. I was talking to somebody the other day, and she said, my kids are having a problem with me now when they're in their 30s. And I'm saying, get over it. Like,
No.
and they don't really see that they did that bad a job as parents. So even in a quote, normal, healthy, you still have some reconciliation work to do, to have a peaceful ending for you and your parent when they leave the world.
Okay, very fascinating. Give us a little bit. So, are you a therapist, or what's your background in?
Well, I'm a professional care manager, which might be new to you. We
Mm,
yeah, 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 yeah.
I know what you do.
Okay, all right. So I started my career 40 years ago. I worked in an activities department. I became an administrator, and then I started my own care management business. And I've worked with older adults and their family. I just love the work. Like I just love. It's very gratifying. Um, Helping people, one, is gratifying, but helping families learn. That's why I wrote the book. I wrote a book called The
Mhm.
Fragile Years, just to kind of reset your system for this time of life, which to me is recognizable, but to the kids that I'm talking to, they're like, they don't understand that their parents are in a stage and they're not going back to being able to climb, Mount Fiji. They're in
Yeah,
a new stage.
that's fascinating. So, in your business, because I understand like care management, caregiving. I know that's such important work because you are basically there at that stage at the end of life, and you're dealing with legacy issues, and kind of like preparing to leave and close that chapter of their lives. But do you specifically provide what kind of services do you provide for the elderly?
So I work in the field right now. I'm an author, and I own a very small business that helps people get, public benefits. And then I'm a
Mm,
consultant with a company that, we have nurses and social workers that consult. We're like coaches to the kids with their parents
got
in
it.
trouble. That's how you
Got
can
it.
think about it. So it's really, what do I do when they're in the hospital? How do I find a good specialist? Where's a good nursing home? We're consultants.
You're a one-stop shop. You're kind of a referral base. Yes,
That's
I
right.
have a few friends that do exactly what you do. And where are you located, Amy?
I'm in
Which
Florida. I'm in Florida. Who do you know out in California?
my friend Brenda Shorkin. I don't know
Oh,
if you know her.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Okay.
know Brenda?
I do. I
Oh,
do.
what a small world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell Brenda you talked to me and tell her I said hello. Yeah.
Oh
We
my
don't know each
gosh.
other personally, but we know of each other. Absolutely.
What a small world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm part of the elder abuse task force in Pasadena, and she's part of that as well. So we
All
work on a
right.
lot of cases together. I've been very busy the last few years, but I was, I'm technically, I think, on the board. What a small world. Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah,
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 so
yeah.
I know exactly what you guys do, but I wanted our audience to hear it because it is a very interesting and unique line of work. But let's kind of unpack some of this other stuff. I really like what you had just talked about with, kind of that parents in their 50s or 60s and then the kids in their 30s, that dynamic. And in fact, I have a friend, I won't mention her name, but she's very upset because she's like 62 right now, but she does not feel she's very disappointed with her children. They have differing political views, they don't get along, and she feels very detached from them. And it's very sad to see, her get depressed during the holidays. And I certainly understand that dynamic. We have such big generational divides these days. What is the way to overcome that before it's too late?
Well, I'm kind of one to look for common ground and for setting real clear boundaries around conversations. I'm a very
Mm,
practical person and my advice is very practical. And I'm in a family with differing views also in a very large family. And I have my own personal rules that I follow. And there's topics that I just don't get into because I value the relationship. And I have to go to
mhm,
the higher ground and say, what do I want? And what I want are long-term relationships. I don't want to be estranged from my family.
mhm.
And so I'm going to find common ground one, and I'm going to figure out the ways that I can spend time together that are not as stressful. So maybe there's shorter visits, maybe there's Zoom calls, maybe there's phone calls, maybe there's letters. I mean, maybe you write a note, write a card. So finding ways that you can communicate to maintain the quality of the relationship, but not compromise your internal stress meter, if you will.
That's a really tough balance because what if one side perceives that boundary setting to be hostile? How do you manage that? Because, let's say you do a shorter visit and then you
Right.
have a parent or a child that feels that that's not enough. Where is that? How do you bridge that disconnect?
Well, I usually speak in positive tones. So the phrasing of, the time that I have to spend with you, I want it to be focused on how you are and how I am. And I
Okay.
want to be real clear on what I want out of this visit. And so um instead of the direct hit of, this is why I'm not visiting and you never understand why I have shorter visit, you're talking about what do I want out of this visit, and giving emotionally to begin with is really, really important here. So I'm so glad we're going to have this time together. Time is precious these days. This is what I'm envisioning for our time together. What are you envisioning? And putting
Mhm.
a kind of a positive, not a spin, but
It's
if
a
you can be
framing.
genuine, a framing. That's right.
Yeah, you frame it from the get-go so the expectations are set. I
Yeah,
like that. That's a very
yeah.
good practical. Now, the Adele situation was very interesting because the father had abandoned her, right? And then this is kind of a reunion of sorts, almost with a stranger because they hadn't gone through that journey together. And now he's at the end of his journey. Can you speak a little bit about those type of cases and how to bridge that? Because obviously there's a lot of emotions, the abandonment piece, and then the stranger piece. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, one thing I loved about Adele is that she acknowledged that she had made mistakes too. So going in with some humility is often helpful, to acknowledge that you're not perfect either. And then really thinking, like I had said earlier, about what is it that you want out of this time. So
Mm,
if you're, what are you wanting? Make sure your expectations, if you're wanting your parent to say, I love you and I wished I'd never abandoned you, if you're really clear about your expectations, then you might be at risk for being disappointed. So make sure that your expectations of this reconciliation or visit are real and practical and achievable. And then going in with where you were and what you're wanting, and then be open to listening to what happened to them. I think the key to good relationships is really understanding what did the other person go through that caused them to do what they did. And sometimes with a little understanding and compassion from where the person was coming from, not taking them off, not to say that they're not responsible, but a little bit of understanding, alcoholism is a disease, and Adele recognized that, and doing whatever you need to do to get the courage that you need to have that quality time. And I'll talk for myself. I get most of my courage from the social support network I have. I have really good long-term friendships that support me and my efforts. So I wouldn't want anyone to go in unsupported, wherever you get that, through your religious organization or friends or a counselor, or make sure that you're emotionally clear and solid before going in. You don't want to go in with a, rod full of anger, or rather any kind of acute emotion. Make sure that that's a little resolved and calmed down a bit before going in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Good advice there. A few other questions. I feel that our society, our American culture, is very kind of dismissive of the elderly. I think that is, very in contrast to, say, Asian cultures. Like, in my upbringing, we are very deferential to the elderly, but even that has its own issues. I'll get to that a little later. But I think the general thing is, in this society, it's very sad, because I think old is considered, less useful, while in Asian cultures and Latino cultures, we're very much like old. It represents wisdom, represents people to revere. How does that come into play in this society, where I think even the overture of going to see an elderly dying parent is less celebrated, or less seen as, a part of our normal everyday in America? I'd love for you to kind of touch on that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I found the absence of people talking about their parents astounding. Like when I tell somebody what I do for a living, they're like, "You do what? Wow." And they don't really understand it. And then the people that are taking care of their parents, they talk to friends who don't have aging parents, and their friends are like, "What are you talking about?" Like, they don't really understand it. And so, and coming up in age self, I have had periods of time where I have felt invisible, where I've been in a room full of younger people and had to really make myself speak, because I could tell I wasn't the most relevant person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So and I don't know why I was blessed with a love of the elderly from a very young age. I don't know why that was. I had no meaningful relationships with my grandparents, but they were so honest and so real and so down to earth. And I was so struck with that's what really helped me stay with it. And so I try to bring that in every interaction that I have. I agree with you. It's shocking to me, that Hillary Clinton's mother died, and we didn't really know about that. We didn't know she took care of her mother. We didn't know that Condoleezza Rice left the public domain to take care of her father. Like, these famous people, you don't know. You know about their children, but you don't know about their parents.
It's our society. It's what we emphasize.
It's our society. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I feel kind of lucky to have been blessed with seeing the value, but on the other hand, I have to really push my way in to say, except when you're in the acute care system, where an older person's a commodity, and that's a real thing. Our medicine system is capitalized. So you have somebody on Medicare, they're making a lot of money on that old person. But I do think that we have a society that doesn't value the older adult. And it's unfortunate. I went to Japan and I saw a totally different world. Oh my, that was the most enriching
Mhm.
experience. I went to one of their, I don't even think they called it a day center, but it was this huge building, and they were all over doing all kinds of programs and activity, and they rode their bikes there. And it was just this, I sat in the bath, and I mean, it was wonderful.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question, except to say that I agree with you. And it's a lost opportunity for those that haven't reached out to spend that kind of time. And it does, I think there's a lot of angst for growing older and dying in this country. And I think
Yes.
that fear stops people from really wanting to step in with their parents, because it's like your own mortality.
Right.
Painful, and there's a lot of complicated emotions, and I'd rather, not feel it, maybe have a drink or eat something and kind of stuff your feelings down, so you don't have to feel the fact that, your parents dying. It's
That's why I
uncomfortable.
asked that question because, I can tell you my dad died in 2018, so 3 years ago. And that was just, I've never experienced a rush of emotions and, really facing my own mortality and saying, oh, my time, who knows when my time is up. So I think in this society where you value youth and not wisdom, just all the fleeting things of youth, we end up not appreciating, you know, the beauty of growing old. But also on top of that, oh, I don't know why this, sorry, just tried to call me. The thing is, it affects people's day to day. So for example, I spent a lot of time in Orange County and Newport Beach, and all these women there are fighting growing old so desperately that their faces get mangled by all this Botox and plastic surgery.
I know.
Right. So I think
It's scary.
that compulsion is a result of, not being able to, like you said, be down to earth and just appreciate what is naturally going to happen in the life's process, as compared to a Japan where people are excited to get old
Mhm.
and be like, hey, I get to relax and have my family take care of me, that type of thing. It's a very different mentality. And I think
Mhm.
I see this being out in the community day to day. But what I've noticed, I wanted to ask this question with and this may go a little bit personally with our Asian cultures here in America, is I certainly with my dad had a very big a difference in the way we see things or view things. And recently, Hollywood Times, we interviewed this guy who started a great organization called Parents Are Human. And Parents Are Human, he was estranged from his parents for like something like 15 years, but then he came back and started opening up these conversations through a card game that he invented, similar to like a Pictionary, or like a, where a question is asked, like trivia. So the parents would open up conversations, and that's when he learned, okay, my parents are obsessive about feeding me because they themselves were starving at a young age, things like that, to kind of bridge the gap. I'll offline send it over to you, because I think that's a really good tool to actually bring kids and their parents together to have a good conversation. But a lot of thoughts raced through my head when I was reading your initial bio and talking to you today. Is a lot of times that first step is so big and so difficult to even have that conversation, because a lot of people, especially certain personality types, do not want to have deep conversations. I
Right,
think maybe you and I, like Myers-Briggs, were more like,
right.
you know,
ENFP.
yeah, exactly. And others are like, oh no, I'm ESTJ or
Yeah.
whatever. And I can't do this, right? So
Right.
how do you bridge that? Well, the first step is the hardest. How do we bridge that?
I'd take the tiniest little step and make it very not deep, just very superficial and of interest to your parents.
Yeah.
like very, whatever is important to them at that time. If it's, the Blue Angels flying, if it's the hummingbirds that are coming to the back porch, if it's whatever those things are, just take an interest in where they are
Mhm,
and have a conversation from that vantage point just to get some kind of flow going. Make it
mhm,
genuine. Oni is picked up right away and is a turnoff. And try not to rush.
mhm,
Try not to rush. Generally, anxiety, and everybody's anxious when they start having these conversations with their parents. It brings up a lot of anxiety. And out of
mhm,
anxiety, everybody does different things to get away from it. So a lot of times they want to control and talk really fast
mhm,
and move really fast. And so you take a deep breath and make your goals. I just want to have at the end of the call a nice feeling between the two of us.
mhm,
That's what I'm going for. Just the weather. I mean, my father loved to talk about the weather. He loved, loved, loved the weather. And consequently, I talk about the weather now, even though I really don't care a lot about the weather. I talk about, you know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing. But so start small and then listen very carefully. I've watched this over the years. Older adults will provide you an opening if you're patient.
mm,
They'll talk about some actor on TV that ran into trouble, or somebody that they know died, or somebody that got admitted to the hospital, or the
mhm,
postman's not delivering mail anymore. They'll give you an opening, and then you take that opening, even if it's
mhm,
9 o'clock at night and you're beat tired and you got to want to get off the phone and just lay down, take the opportunity when they open it up to you so that it's not this big thing that you're starting. Let them
mhm,
start it, but you got to be really emotionally there and be
mhm,
ready for it when it happens.
mhm. Great, great answer. Now, Alzheimer's and dementia are really common these days, especially with, I have my theories. I think it's a diet that and a lot of the chemicals that go into our foods, but that's a whole different
We've got
story.
so much in common. We have got so much in common, Mark. We keep asking your questions, but yeah, yeah.
But the Alzheimer's and the dementia is an end result of a lot of the elderly right now, and my mom is one of those. So my mom, actually, she has a benign tumor in her frontal lobe, which has really affected short-term memory. And even when my dad died, she was completely like, she didn't really was able to process that. And in that case, I kind of missed my window. She was a very tough parent, growing up, and we were estranged for many years, but I've lost that opportunity, or maybe I haven't. So how do we deal with a parent with Alzheimer's, dementia, or any cognitive degeneration?
Well, I feel for you with your mom, and it's a long road. And my dad had frontotemporal dementia, so I know how that goes. And I don't think everything's lost because they've lost their memory, but and I'm assuming you've already gotten educated about, I would learn, one,
Mhm,
get a basic foundation of memory impairment and what's normal so that you don't compound communication without just because of ignorance. And then I kind of think of it as like taking a trip. I go where they are and
mhm.
plan on enjoying myself wherever that is. My dad was spotting buffalo out his nursing home window. so so
You
we
were
had
there with him.
Oh yeah, I was in there with them. So go where they are, and then you are going for the feeling of establishing a meaningful, loving connection.
Mhm. And that
And
will go a long way.
it goes a long way. It goes a long way. And because you won't hear back from her what you might want to hear back from her, you can build on some loving memories. And I think it's a deeper, more meaningful experience. It's easy to love someone who loves you back.
Yes.
It's harder and yet more deeply satisfying to love someone who doesn't love you back because they can't.
Yes.
So you're watching her nonverbal. It's a more meaningful, and then you're teaching those around you, that anybody that's in her world, they're watching you and seeing how you interact. So you're teaching others. You're kind of spreading that love around you because you're doing the harder thing. You're taking the higher road. And I know for me, I watch people like that. I watched a guy sit with his wife for 8 hours a day, and she didn't know who he was. And they've been
Wow.
married for 60 years. I'll never forget him. And I thought
That's
to
so
myself,
powerful.
I want to be like you. And I said to him, so I said, one day I'm going to be like you. I hope I have it in me to be like you.
Mhm.
So he doesn't know the profound impact he had on me, but they let you know, the memory impairment, they'll let you know what they like and what they like to do. I had a guy that was a businessman in this nursing home, and he was a money manager, and he loved to handle dollar bills. He just wanted to touch them and rub them. So we got, a bunch of dollar bills, and when he would come up and go, money, 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 we would give him $1 and he'd rub it, he'd grin, happy, happy, happy.
That's so adorable.
Yeah.
But yes, we go back to the basics is what it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
especially as we get older. No, that's very powerful. And I
Yeah.
love that quote about, what you said about easy. It's harder to love someone that doesn't, that doesn't show the love the way you want them to show it. So
Right.
that's really, really tests your ability to be selfless, I guess, at that point. So
That's exactly right. That's
yeah,
exactly it. And isn't part of life, or a lot of life, learning that lesson, like
yeah,
giving to others, getting
absolutely.
it? Absolutely. And you get the benefit of having that experience to learn and to grow
Mhm.
as a person.
And I wanted to ask you about your book. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about, what we can expect, the name of the book, where we can find it, and what to expect when we open it up.
So it's called The Fragile Years: Proven Strategies for the Care of Aging Loved Ones, and it's on Amazon. And it's inside intelligence for all the systems that you're going to have to interact with your parent: hospital,
Mhm.
nursing home, assisted living, Medicaid, VA, Social Security, Medicare, Medicare Advantage. It's got everything in there. So no matter where your parent is in the fragile years, you'll
Mhm.
have a foundation to learn, because you got to learn things in short order when they hit the skids, when they are in a crisis. So and the biggest thing is, you're going to learn what the stages are of the fragile years, so you don't stay frustrated with, why is your parent not getting better?
Mm,
When they're in the fragile years, they don't get better.
makes a
So
lot of sense.
you want them to have quality of life, and rather than giving them a lot of care, you're kind of like supporting them to have less care, so their quality of life at the end is longer and more peaceful, without a lot of those acute interventions. But so recognizing the stages, and
Mhm.
then having the inside intelligence to navigate it when they run into medical difficulty.
Absolutely. No, so this basically the one-stop shop and a teaser to, calling you and getting your services. I love
Right.
it.
And care management, I would put them on the Aging Life Care website,
Mhm.
aginglifecare.org, to find somebody in your area that can help you.
Mhm.
Um, it's a lot to learn in a hurry.
Right. Especially when a health event hits and, suddenly they go from fully self-sufficient and functional to not, which is
That's
kind of
right.
what happened
That's
with
exactly
my
right.
family.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Now, I wanted to, I wrote this, before the interview, but I really wanted to ask you, um, I know you had talked about people who have grieved, who are stuck in that grief stage that can't get beyond it because they missed the opportunity. And we would preventative medicine is best if everyone could spend time with their parents before they left us. But for those who didn't and don't have that uh, didn't have that opportunity or didn't take that opportunity, what is your advice to them?
Well, there's a couple things that have helped me, and it's helped clients of mine. One is letter writing. Letter writing. everything that you would want to say, put in a letter. Get somebody to sit there and listen to you in everything that you might have wanted to say to your parents. Get it verbally out. It's one thing to get stuck in your head. It's another thing to say everything out loud to someone who could really hear you. And by that, I mean, someone that's lost a parent, and you know this, when you lost your dad, the friends that had lost a parent, they connected with you, and you could tell they had empathy, and there was that connection, and it uplifted you.
Mhm.
And I've had that too. And the ones that hadn't lost a parent, they were wanting to be kind, but they didn't have that natural empathy because they hadn't been through it. So you find someone that, has some empathy and can listen and verbalize those feelings. And then going somewhere and either visualizing, and I don't want to get too, above myself, visualizing, praying, sending messages for your parents. What would you have wanted for them? Give them something. Can sometimes open that channel up a little bit to let the grief kind of move through your system more naturally or more smoothly.
Beautiful, beautiful, great, practical. I like that, letter writing. Great. Well, do you have anything else that you want to tell our Hollywood Times audience, Amy? And I'm going to give the floor to you before we wrap up, but I got plenty to write a great article on you.
I'm so glad you've been a pleasure. I can tell you really connect to the topic, and I will send up some positive vibes for you with your mom. Is she in town with you?
Yeah, she's in assisted living. So,
Yeah.
we pray for her, and, thank you for that. And, yeah. Oh, where can we find you? Like, are you on social media? Do you have a website?
I have a website. It's called agingexpert.com.
Okay. Aging Expert, one word.
Agingexpert.com.
Awesome. So that is the one-stop shop for the one-stop shop that is you. I love it.
That's right. That's right.
Great. Well, Amy, I wish you a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in contact, and I'll send you a link to your publicist once this is up.
Sounds good. Take care. Good to talk to you, Mark.
Thank you, Amy.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.